We've got more zoning hearings coming up. You're doing a hell of a job up there.
Address anything, so you don't have to give me.
I'm just looking for feasibility of working in the garage. You need a 20 feet for the car,
Yeah.
and then 8 feet. Where you put a workbench
Is it
across the
quarter
front.
a month
You
road?
might as well just do the 30. And then if you do 36, you might as well just do 40. Because it just gives you a 2 foot of room. You need room. You always need room to stuff. That's why the
Line of
30 by 40
sight,
just
line of sight there or anything like that?
just makes sense.
They gave me this now, but they said he owned all of
We need to change something else in the zone.
When I did my garage, I started out with
property.
40 by 80, and
Oh,
then to get the wood
Considered a
truss,
corner lot.
to the 32 foot
Yeah.
truss.
I remember when we
So I went with
You
32.
probably argued that, right?
Wow.
I just sat and
Here it is. It's still running.
So they did grant?
I think it was because of line of sight. When it starts at 5, having go
we,
through.
see, I thought that was the
Follow
reason why we
people.
had it in there.
Yeah,
that
I
was line of sight.
think that that's kind of what they said, that you can't,
Yes, sir.
you can't make something that covers everything, so.
They really
They
do.
really feel it and look at the line of sight.
There, I got you.
Brett, you with us?
Yes, sir, sorry.
Ready to go?
Yes, sir. Jesus, man. Triple class.
Well, this is your meeting, so
Oh.
we're ready to go. How do you want to handle it? Just yes to everything, or?
What I would like to do, given, I think we've made leaps and bounds on the review of the plans as submitted, the comments received, and then resubmission is just, as we did last time, go through the letter, if I could.
Yeah, I thought that's what you would do,
That's what I'm,
and we will ask questions, at least I will, as we go along.
I'm just gonna roll this out so I can.
Gary. Gary.
I didn't see, I wondered if trusted me where I didn't see you come in.
He called it. I carried his question.
Okay. So, albeit a workshop, first, appreciate your time. I know that's an extra meeting. I did want to open with sort of a general comment. We are in receipt, letter dated October 1st, from Glenn Smith in response to our 9/25, I think,
September 25th.
September 25th resubmission, as a result of our prior official planning commission meeting.
Right.
Now, while that comment letter is still, I believe it's 7 pages long, generally speaking, Glenn Smith's, there are a lot of placeholding items in there, and I don't know, I won't ask you to agree, but there are numerous items in there regarding bonding and developers agreements, and as a matter of course, documents and instruments and paperwork that must and can only follow an approval, meaning I can't execute I can't execute a developer's agreement or have an approved bond amount until such time as we've got an approved plan. So while I'll address those comments, that would kind of be my response to many of them. There are very few in here that I believe are of any substance with regard to the preparation of the plans and the content of the plans.
There was a couple.
Yeah, I've got like a couple, right? And I will primarily be focusing on the zoning part. With me tonight is, this has been here before, is Alberto Joaquin from Gateway with respect to, if we want to get into specific stormwater, because that's not my bailiwick, right? So I'll begin again with the October 1 letter, zoning item number 1, and I'll just go right to the status. Documentation of NSTMA approval, proposed waterline improvements. Generally speaking, we are still regarding this as a collaborative effort between ourselves and the municipal authority to get the water line built. We have, 3 weeks ago probably, provided plans to Lennon Smith with a generic a layout, requesting information on where do we want the water line, where are hydrants, valves, and whatnot. As I mentioned earlier, some of these items are just going to, I'll say naturally, but will fall in line through that collaboration, continued collaboration between myself, Gateway, and Municipal Authority. I know I'm not gonna put you on the spot to answer that, but Linda Smith's has got the plans. We just don't have any input back on those. And I know, John, that's not where you're at. I had a call into Alex from last week, just, where are we? I think we've asked for the CAD files just to make sure that our datums, everything, matches, because we're picking up where they're leaving off. But we acknowledge that there's an approval of the water system required.
When do you think that's gonna be done?
That's largely up to the water authority, the municipal authority.
Well, you're meeting with them, do you have another meeting set up?
I do not. We're waiting on comments. We've given them plans saying, asking, for information. And stop me if I'm wrong here, but we've made those requests. We've had that meeting. We are looking for, design criteria of what they would like to see.
Do you have any update on it?
Yeah, so it's my understanding, of talking with Larry and Alex, there was a pre-application meeting held a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And at that point, we still haven't received a formal application from the applicant yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. When we left off the meeting, we said that we'd provide them a CAD file
Okay.
in our alignment, because they were gonna look at the model and see what size water line has to be brought down for the development.
Okay.
And then, we had asked them to give us their, previously approved PennDOT plans and the other plans, just so we can make our plans consistent for the whole system, and, you know what I mean? And we're still kinda waiting for them to provide information on that.
Okay, so you're still awaiting for
Yeah.
the municipal authority?
Yeah, we've set up the alignment for the 15,000 feet. We've surveyed it all. We have all the right of way, but now it's just finalizing where do we put the line, what kind of valves do they want, what kind of shutoffs, what kind of connections. And we were hoping that with the plans that you guys already did and you're already building, that we can just go off of that and make them exactly the same. That way, there's no issues with the design and the permitting and the review of them. So.
And the obvious benefits there are that we're using the same valve, the same fitting, the same pipe. So when the authority crews might need to do repair or maintenance, it's not one valve on part of a 989 and a different valve on a different part. Noting, however, that from a planning perspective, I believe we've done everything that we're required. And it is a third party, albeit still a township, but it is a third party agreement. It typically would actually follow the approval of planning. Not that we're gonna be moving lot lines around, but we get sequentially, we get our design set, we're done moving lots, we're done moving roads, and then we finalize those drawings. That would be the standard in which that was done. Our plans as submitted, because this comment actually began by addressing a couple of laterals weren't shown,
Yeah.
and somehow grew to an approval.
You wanted a meeting on Monday?
I guess I am.
Well, just wondering.
No, I'll
If they say they don't need you, then don't go. But
I'll follow up with Larry. I've offered. So I will call Larry. Mr. Hoff, I should say.
You're talking about now, now we're talking about the main one?
Well, the main water line's coming from 989.
Right.
Yeah.
That needs the letter from the municipal authority to the township saying they
Yeah.
are in agreement with what they're doing.
Right. To be clear, the ordinance reads, the ordinance requires public central water service shall be supplied to each structure to be erected in the development subject to the requirements of the township and or authority with jurisdictions. The comment was proposed water service lateral connections have not been provided. Documentation and STMA approval of the proposed water line improvements has not been provided. So, we are, I assure you, we are working together to get the water line, designed and ultimately built to the parameters that we're needing the authority's input on. So.
Okay, well, I have two things on that area. One, from early on, we talked about water being available to all of the people on Klein Road. I think this question came up at the last meeting of, you're not showing the extension of the water service to the municipal line. If you're not gonna do that, then the water's not available to the people. on
Well, to
Klein
say
Road.
all the people on Klein Road would be a complete misnomer, because there's a lot of, I'm not providing a service.
You need not the service, but the water
But
line, so that they
I-
can tap into.
I will agree, I will agree to what is on the plans of tentative approval. I honestly don't know what's actually shown in there. I cannot vary from what those approved plans show.
Well, we talked about it very on in the overall discussion. And that we would supply water and sewer for the people
That we
on Klein
fronted,
Road.
is how in my head.
All the immediate houses on Klein Road. What you front is just for
We've agreed to
actually 3 actual houses.
build it to along our property frontage.
We need the water to the municipal line.
Mr. Horn, respectfully, if that's what's shown on our tentative plan approvals, that's what we'll build. I cannot vary from those approvals because I'm aware of opposition to this water line extension in the first place. While 3 people I will build to what is on our plans. That's what I cannot vary from our tentative plan approval.
It was my understanding that we were not showing the extension of the line because you didn't get approval yet from the municipal authority to fully run the line to the municipal county line. That's why it probably hasn't come up again, but it was very early on, that's what we said was needed. The line has to be run to the municipal line to take care, Mary, to take care of the people in that area on Klein Road.
Respectfully, again, as much as I would like to say yes to that, it is not, to my knowledge, on our tentative plan approvals, which I cannot vary from.
I don't understand that statement.
A tentative plan.
I'm going by our discussions throughout the process.
I get that, and again, if that line is shown on the tentative plan approval, I'm very happy to build it.
All right, so we're looking at this is the tentative plan under
Now,
C.
these are our final plans,
Okay,
okay?
where would I get a copy of the tenant?
Well, you have to go back to 2 copies before this one to see the tentative, but it wouldn't be any different, I don't think.
When you on there, let's see.
It's not a matter, so just to be clear, it's not a matter of 1,000 extra feet of water line. Okay, it's a matter of what do the plans show.
I don't know the difference of that statement. It was our verbal agreement that you would supply the water service to the municipal line. That was very on in the overall discussions.
And as I said, if that is in fact in the tentative findings of fact and conclusions of law and appears on the tentative plan approval, I'll be
The only
absolutely
reason
100%
it was
do it.
never put on the actual plan was because you never had an agreement with the municipal authority to show that. But that's always been our understanding, and I felt our agreement to run that line, to service the people on Klein Road.
I cannot go back in time and interpret conversation for what's on drawings of record.
If we don't have that line run to the end of there, I'm not gonna be in favor of approving this plan in 2 weeks. That's the bottom line.
I understand, so
And
that
I
I'm,
will
so that I'm
ask
clear
if
back
you're
with you.
saying- if
If
you're
that line
saying-
is not on the plans and you don't, we have a bigger issue. You do not have the option.
I don't agree with that. The option is for you to agree to do it, because we talked about it.
Again, I cannot agree to do something that was not on the plans and appeared at the public hearing. Plans has appeared at the public hearing are the plans of record. I cannot vary from those. I've worked with you every step of the way, and the only reason I'm saying that is that I cannot vary from that tentative plan approval without being subject to an additional.
I don't agree with that statement at all. It was talked about, was agreed to, and today it's not being shown. The best I can
No,
do,
it was-
if we can't come to an agreement on it tonight, I'm gonna ask for another extension and
That will not be granted.
continue the discussion. If you're saying it's not gonna be granted, then I'm gonna just turn down the plan, period. I guess that's our next step.
And to be clear, you will turn down the plan based on the plans that this committee, as well as the board, have approved at the public hearing, to be clear, for the record, based on a line that was not shown on those plans, nor does it, to my knowledge, appear in the findings of fact and conclusions of law, as signed by the Board of Supervisors, as the basis for turning down the plan.
If I have to seek legal counsel, and that is what you're suggesting, then I
I'm
will
not
do that.
suggesting anything,
Well, you are suggesting. We had
I
an
haven't said
agreement,
the whole word.
as far as I'm concerned, we had an agreement for you to extend the line, service lines, actually both water and sewer, to service the people on Klein Road. That was the agreement.
I do not believe that that's correct. I believe that I agreed to extend the water and sewer via a line, physical line in the ground, or an easement to provide those customers, or those potential customers, immediately adjacent to the property
Why would we
limits.
agree to 3 houses when there's 8 houses up there? That don't make any sense whatsoever. To add to that,
Now, you did mention sewer, to be clear,
you mentioned sewer and water.
and that was never agreed that there would be any extension of the sewer line beyond the property limits. To the extent I've had
Why wouldn't it?
infield
'Cause
meetings
We talked
with,
about the need to have capacity at the plant for at
now
least,
you're mixing scenarios.
Uh,
Capacity at the plant and building the lines are two different concepts.
why wouldn't we do it if we wanna say we need the capacity to
Because at
cover all
some
the
point,
houses?
I can't build
To
the,
cover all the houses on Klein Road, meaning in the vicinity of the, development, not prior or further down the hill. It doesn't make sense to me. Furthermore.
I interrupted you.
Furthermore, the Masons asked at a meeting that if they want water, that the line would be extended for them as well on Hoffman Road.
Which I agreed to extend beyond our physical property limit and get it onto their property, not the entirety of their property.
Well, I can't say I know exactly where it has to be run, but I believe it needed to be run to their driveway, which is not just on their
But I
property.
believe he replied that he may be moving his driveway.
Might be 100 or more feet, I don't know. I just understand that they came back
I
to the
agreed to extend
municipal.
that line to stick a pipe on his property such that he would no way require an easement from us or the eventual HOA to connect to that line.
So what's that mean?
That means I agreed to put one stick of pipe, 20-foot stick of pipe beyond the property line such that the Masons had free and clear access from their property to get to the water main, not build it 150 or 200 or whatever distance their property frontage is,
Not
for
their
them to
front.
come back and tap it in the first 10 feet. And I believe he had mentioned, Mr. Mason had mentioned something about possibly moving his driveway, and he wasn't sure exactly where he would want to connect anyways.
My understanding is that they are gonna wanna connect. I thought they were talking to the municipal authority, and that's the only reason I'm asking your party to the meetings. That if they wanna connect, they wanted to connect at their driveway. Whether they're moving the driveway, as you're suggesting, I can't answer that.
Well, he had previously asked me to install a culvert at his driveway where it is now. And that discussion led to, well, let's continue that because I may be moving my driveway. And pointing for the record, I'm here to talk about ordinance. And these conversations about what Mr. Mason may have said to to the municipal authority at a meeting I wasn't present, and who said what, and what he may or may want to do, where he wants to do it, I'm not privy to those, and they're not applicable.
But you just said you would extend the line.
I agreed to extend the line 20 feet at Mr. Mason's request, such that he required no, if I stop the line directly at our property line, for him to have workspace, the ability to not have to be on the Meadowcrest property, whether it's me or eventually when the HOA takes over, that he doesn't need to go back to them and need, this much room, because he can't get to the water line.
I'm agreeing.
So we
I know-
agreed to extend it onto his property to give him free and clear access.
I just assumed the Masons would be here tonight, that maybe that could be cleared up, but since they're not here, we can only argue so much. I need your approval to extend the line on Klein Road to the municipal line.
Respectfully, Mr. Horn, Mr. Chairman.
Don't have to be respectful, I just wanna know that you're doing it.
I know that you want to know that I'm doing it, but I
Yes,
want to know.
want to know that you're doing it.
There are pending issues in here that, in my rough estimation, is probably an $80,000 expense that
What's
was never
pending?
agreed to.
What's pending?
There are discussions of road improvements in here as well.
Well, there was discussion on the water line. Maybe I didn't at some time stress sewer and water, but we definitely stressed service lines to the municipal line to handle the people strictly on Klein Road. And there's 5 houses, I believe, past your line. And it may have been an earlier discussion as well, because you were considering purchasing the next piece of property, but I know that didn't work out. But that was a discussion and you were in agreement with it. So if we don't come to an agreement with it tonight, then I guess what you're saying, my only option is to go to the legal action, which I'll have to do if that's not the
I
case.
can't advise you in any way.
I wouldn't expect you to
on
advise
whether
me.
legal action or not.
I just need you
I
to agree
can
to
advise,
extend
and
the
again, to
line.
restate. Findings and fact and conclusions of law associated with the tentative plan approval in the public hearing which was held for this plan identify the limits, the scope, specific conditions. Obviously, I have to build a water line in our own community. If it's on there and it's in the findings of fact, I'm happy to build it. If it's not, I cannot just stand here and voluntarily say, I'll go do this and I'll go do that. I am aware that there was an appeal made for the interconnect in the first place to the water line, which tells me someone out there has opposed the extension of that water line in the first place.
Yeah.
And adding another
There's
and
nothing-
adding another 1,000 feet of that extension furthers that objection.
I don't agree they're connected, but that's immaterial at this point. That's an open subject. You guys have any comments? Chris, you catch up to us here?
No, I understand what you're saying, I see it run to the edge of the property, and, I don't know. I'd like to see if there's a record in there, if there's an agreement on that.
Yeah, number.
And I understand what you're saying, that they were proposed
Who's this?
and then agreed upon, and that, yeah, I understand the extension wasn't in there, in the drawings.
Whose decision?
What you're saying is you proposed these drawings, and they've been, you know.
They've been, I believe, substantially the same, forever. And if we agreed to it, and again, I will stick to my guns there. I just don't know that beyond maybe a conversation, that was part of the,
I remember the conversation with sanitary on Mojack Lane.
Yeah, that's in the plan, I've seen it there.
right, but I'll use by example, sir, I have here this is the findings and facts and conclusions of law signed by Mr. Bonzo, that identifies those specific criteria, one of them being sewer extension to Mojack Lane. You know, that was put on the plan.
Were you on December 19th?
Am I, yeah,
Okay. Number 17 says public water from Westley Water Authority shall be provided to the development as proposed by the developer via a pipe extended along 989 Klein Road and Hoffman Road. I could also construe that includes what I'm suggesting, although it does say specifically to the development.
and we are specifically extending the water line along 989 Klein Road and Hoffman Road.
You're just not completing it on Klein Road.
I was trying to find a,
Where are these two woods running towards this line on the track? Is that the ones that across the road? Is that these ones that are on the
Which ones would
North
run,
side.
Brett?
north side of,
I don't have,
I'm missing.
I don't have my, where's Woods Run at?
it says, proposed water line service.
that cul-de-sac
not
across the road?
provided.
Woods Run Road is at the end of the development. It's the one at the very end of it right here.
Nearest Cranberry,
Yeah.
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 so that's on C 304, is that end of the
That's this, that's what it's saying.
It's one of the cul-de-sacs across the street.
No, it's the one on this side.
It's on the southern side of Klein Road.
It's right there.
Just Woods Run.
and speaking of sewer, Alberto reminded me of an important, we're talking sewer and water at the same time. There's a manhole right here. That's the limit of our manholes. We didn't need to build it there to that limit. We could have held it within the plan. We agreed to extend it such that folks across the street, it was within the public right of way. And if they front on it, they can get it. If it needed to be extended, they can get to it. And we did not take and run a manhole, 1,000 feet left on Klein Road.
If you're gonna put a manhole, I'd put it across the street, not where you have it, if that's the case, how you design it.
It's within the right of way, which allows the public to access it.
Yeah, but they also have to dig up the road to access it. Doesn't make any sense to do that.
Well, I have to dig up the road. I mean, at some point in time, the folks that want sewer need to be responsible
The
for
idea
their.
in the discussion was very clear, that the people on Klein Road would be able to access sewer and water from your development. And accessing sewer and water is not running the line down the street. In your case, what you're saying, 1,000 feet. If that's what it was, that's what it was. At the time, we weren't talking about the distance, we were talking about making it available to them. Putting the sewer where you're putting it, for them to access it, they gotta go across the street, doesn't make sense.
We did the same thing with the sewer as we did with the water. It's brought up, and I will beg to differ. Accessibility, once a utility, the sewer remains to be seen as far as, obviously it's not a public entity at this point in time. The water certainly is targeted to be. Access means you can go get it. That is access. It's within the public right-of-way. I could not stop anybody from picking up that road within the, to be recorded, whether it's the right-of-way or if there's an easement required for that water line, to come and get that, to come and get it. We agreed to have the line extended, and there's provisions made, which is exactly why they both stop at our easterlymost road to provide that access to those folks. We talked about this at length when you were asking Mr. Horn about us putting taps in under the road for the water and the sewer, and I said no, they've got to come do that. There's a process to that, specifically with the sewer, much more involved with the
And I agree,
water.
that was the conversation. You wouldn't supply the taps. You would supply the line for them to tap to. And where it's at is not providing the line for them to tap to. For 3 lots it is, yes, but not for the street. Where's that? Did you read 17?
Yeah, I put it right here.
That was the sewer. That's remote.
There's several 17s, but I want to make sure we're talking about the same 17. What sheet are you reading?
Page 20.
It's the decision.
17. I do not in any way object to the content of 17. And I guess to point out, I did not write this. We did not write this, our legal staff did not write this. I had no revision to it, no opportunity to review it before we had it. Again, which goes back to why this is presented to me in advance of the public hearing. This is presented to me as a result of the public hearing, okay? And I am bound to this.
I can read into 17 that you're gonna put the line in. I can interpret that very easily.
But let me ask another question. Would you read into that I'm installing a water line on the entirety of Hoffman Road? Or the entirety of Route 989?
No, when we talked about Hoffman Road, and you said you'd run it to the end. Only then, after that, did the Masons ask that they could tap into it, and you said you'd run extended for them.
Correct.
You weren't clear whether it was 20 feet or 100 feet. You
I
said you
promised I would give them
if they wanted
unfettered
to tap,
access.
you would run it. That's what you said.
Correct.
Run
And
the
we're
line.
not talking about one extra joint of pipe. And if we were, I wouldn't be standing here, debating it with you. It's approximately 1,000 feet. That's not me, is it? Is it my phone? Or I'm not bringing it
Does anyone have any other questions on the water? You don't, let them go to number 2.
Item 2, as I mentioned earlier, there are numerous, I'll call them placekeeping comments in here. Number 2 is revolving filling, development, piping, concentrating, or diverting for wetland or stream fills. Those applications have all been made to the respective agency, Beaver County Conservation and or DEP, as Beaver County may see fit, as is noted pending. Item number 3 is exactly the same. Obviously, I cannot begin earthwork activities without a conservation district and NPDS permit to do so. Again, I hope you would agree, John, that these are, again, placekeeping matters that need to be rectified. They are third parties. They are not. They may be contingent upon the contingency of an approval, but not a direct ordinance requirement.
So items 2 or 3 are third party. The only thing I would note on item 3 is we do have ENS plans, but we haven't seen an updated ENS report from any, like a formal report. We just see the plans in there. So that's the one ask we would have is provide the formal ENS report.
Well, I
for
think we
file.
provided, you guys asked for ENS calculations, we provided that.
ENS.
Yeah, the ENS calculations we provided.
I don't recall seeing that in the submission. I remember the stormwater report being provided, but I don't remember erosion sedimentation control report.
There was a packet of calculations.
Within the stormwater report?
Separate, it says ENS calculations, a separate document, like 77 pages.
I don't remember seeing that in the submission, but I will look into that and we'll follow up.
We printed out 2 copies when we delivered it to you guys, and it should be in the link that I sent over
Okay.
to Sean Wingberg. It says ENS calculations.
Okay, I'll look into that.
We kind of went away from, they kind of went away from the reports now and the
Okay.
PDS submissions. We just provide all the calculations for all the ENS features,
Okay.
EMPs.
Okay. But yeah, to the point, ultimately number 3 is an NPDES permit approval from the county conservation district. So,
Yeah, I have mine marked as when is this forthcoming, meaning, you know, somewhere along the line, some of this stuff should be coming forward before. It's not a end of approval, because you've already applied for it, I'm assuming.
Certainly, I don't, the best answer. I obviously cannot predict when the staff at the conservation district will approve those plans. They don't necessarily have a set, I must submit, they don't operate like you where there's a planning commission meeting every month and we're getting a review letter and we're responding. It's a different animal with those folks.
yeah, the conservation district doesn't have a set schedule. They could issue the permit tomorrow, or they could issue the permit a year from now. There's no deadlines for.
Can I say something too? And I mean, as far as we submitted the permit, we received administrative comments. They give us 60 days to respond. We're working on those comments. We're gonna have a meeting with the reviewer in person with her within the next week or two. Then after we submit, they review that. Then they go to the technical phase or technical stage. They'll give you technical comments. Same thing. They'll give you 30 days to respond back. So it takes months.
You're saying it's in the 60-day range right now? Meaning you already
Just for the
submitted it.
administrative, but there's 2 steps. There's administrative and technical, you know. So and there's no expedited review for them. It's just whenever they get to it, and then it could be 4 months from now, 6 months from now.
And mind you, as an appropriate planning stage, that's not laziness or poor planning on our part. There's an unwritten milestone when we get to a certain point in our presentations to you with respect to where roads need to go, how many lots they're going to be, the slope issue from the 2-to-1 to the 3-to-1. We must be reasonably confident that the plans aren't going to materially change with respect to erosion and sediment control measures, stormwater measures, certainly paving. So there's a point in time where I have to be comfortable that I don't have 2 trains, not so much running down the parallel tracks, if you will. That these plans aren't going to change that require us to then start over again, if you will, at the conservation district. And we've been in here for months, so it's not unreasonable to expect that a parallel review by the conservation district would take equally as long, because the environmental component is a very important one.
John, you read this, if you go with what John says.
When did you send your plan over to the conservation district?
Alberto, how long have we been?
I'll look right now when we submitted. We submitted on. So this was submitted on 8/12.
8/12?
8/12. It was submitted to them. Yep.
It's better than a month.
Yep.
Month and a half. So what was your trigger for submitting it to the conservation district?
When we get through our public hearing and everything has worked itself out, and we begin, typically when we begin final plan preparation, which is exactly where we're at now, is we will at that time begin our NPDES permit application. Back to my tentative. I can't move roads, tentative plan is set. So typically we will get into you guys first with our final plan application on the tail end of that. we'll then add the ENS, the complete ENS package to that. To do so otherwise would be,
No, I was just curious what action we took in August, like when was our last action for,
when was our hearing? When was our public hearing over in the other building?
that was shooting the spring.
Yeah, I want to say that was
April 24th.
April, something 21. Oh, here, that's right on there.
You should have that, Ron.
It was April 24th.
April 20th.
24th. 4/24. I'm just a numbers person.
There you go. So April 24th, we've then got, there's a 30-day appeal period. There's certain timeframes that are set from that public hearing that can be appealed, which in fact was to occur. Give these guys time to move the switch from a tentative plan as far as content goes to a final plan. We're getting into designing each and every culvert, every pipe size, and so on. So I'm gonna guess maybe 60 days or so to get back in for final, which loosely correlates to that 8-12 date as far as being a plan where we were reasonably certain that the development proposal would not substantially change, and that I had a stormwater design submitted to the township and a different stormwater design under review by the conservation district. And believe me or don't believe me, that's just a good move for everybody, so that Glenn Smith's out there looking at the plan, the conservation district's out there looking at the plan, and all of a sudden, road's not there, or a inlet's not there, or,
Yeah,
whatever.
no,
Okay with it?
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's good.
I'd love to start earlier, but then,
Yeah.
I'll kind of get into a
But
circular
you're
argument.
not saying that none of this engineering was done prior to that, right?
Well, with tentative, we have, your ordinance has very specific requirements as far as what's shown. It's a more of a generic stormwater plan. It's more of a generic storm drain plan. That's the big one. When we get that preliminary approval or tentative approval, then that allows us to say that's not just a pipe, but that's a 15-inch pipe and that's a 24-inch pipe, and that pond's gonna.
So that was the engineering time.
That was the engineering time that it took to get from a more generalized application to a very specific application. Am I correct in saying that, Alberto?
Yeah, and we submitted to the township like our final plans on August 30th. You know what I mean? So we had submitted the MPDS prior to that.
Prior to.
You know, so.
All right, any other questions on?
Okay. Where I thought we'd get to very relatively quick was number 4 regarding the overlay of the road. This would be the existing roads within the development limits for both Hoffman and Klein. We have agreed, as is stated in the findings of fact and conclusions of law, to widen either of those roads to a point where they meet a minimum standard of 18 feet. Additionally, we have agreed, albeit not an ordinance requirement in any location, to resurface those roads. The detail has been added. This comment, if you could, was respective of reestablishing to the extent possible the crown. I believe that's your latest,
Yes.
where we're at, okay?
Comment 4A, the intent here is a reminder and acknowledgement to the developer here.
Correct.
That you have added the detail as requested in the last meeting.
Right.
That when you're done with Hoffman and Klein, that it does meet the township standard detail relative to crown, and that there's positive drainage.
And I'm perfectly fine with that, with the only exception being if the road is, because I just drove it. There's a few spots where it's super elevated and you've got you've got some curves, and what I can agree to, the crown to establish that to the extent that I'm not materially altering the existing drainage paths or areas that are out there as to not cause ponding, if you will.
Not making a more hazardous condition of the road.
Correct. That's, it's standard. The piece of Klein, this was, I believe, one of the gas companies topped it. That's what they did. I mean, they recrowned it to the best they could, but you don't want me adding 10 inches of bars to try to spot it all over the plans. We did provide that language with respect to maintenance. Alexis, we never heard as of today.
Yeah, so, from our perspective, that comment is just pending Alexis's approval.
Yep. Number 7, Klein and Hoffman Road improvements have not been included in the corresponding phasing plan. We can certainly add that, or I will simply acknowledge that the widening and topping of those roads at the direction, and stop me if I'm wrong, of the township is that widening and topping follows the topping of the roads within the plan. That's how the findings of fact reads. Now, it doesn't read all the roads in the plan. We're agreeable to having it be the last thing we do, or potentially we do a portion of that as we.
If you wanna put the binder down first, so you've got a solid thing to drive on, that's not a problem, but when that project is done, the overlay goes on.
When the entire project is done, that's when we install the overlay. Okay. Which is fine. Again, that would be most, if it's agreeable, most properly included in the developer's agreement because it's a written statement as opposed to a plan,
So
statement.
you're saying at the end of phase 1, when you consider you're done, you're gonna put the final layer on the phase 1, you'll do.
These are irrespective of one another. The internal street toppings, that's another discussion to have. But internally to the community, as we finish phases and we want to dedicate those roads, we would then be eligible to top those roads that we built. What this comment is pertaining to is the topping of Klein and Hoffman.
When are you planning on doing Klein and Hoffman?
And it's the direction I just received at the very end of the community, when all the homes are built.
When you're done, they're leaving. I mean, they can put the binder in right at the beginning. First day, put the binder in so it's not crushing the roads. I mean, it'll be a little bit, it gets the bigger rock. I mean, it doesn't look very pretty, but it's kind of what we do now on our roller roads.
So you're satisfied that when they're 100% done with the development, they're gonna put the wearing surface on the.
Not to speak for it, but what he's protecting here is that when I'm done, the last thing I do is give you a brand new surface of the road that stays there, as opposed to putting it down on day 1 and then driving over it for 5 years, and you probably have what you have. It gets beat up.
5 years, it'll be what it is today.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what if their economy collapses and they never get completed because nobody can afford to live in them? And then you don't have a finished road.
Well, they have a bond. They have a bond.
I want to do it early,
You know,
but because it
I'm
helps.
just saying that's a scenario.
Yeah,
I don't have the luxury of-
early and they
So-
damage the road, they're gonna fix that road before they do the final paving.
Well, you wouldn't put the binding down, they got a truck, that the roadway's not made for that, it's a township roadway, there's no asphalt underneath that roadway. So you're gonna have to put binding down to do that.
You're
Get on
scratching.
with
You
it.
mean you're leveling and
Yeah.
you're scratching.
Yeah,
They're
put it
Yeah.
down
gonna
before
be,
you
there's gonna
start.
be triaxles, tractor trailers on it, they're really, if we allow them to leave it.
Oh, I get that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I am agreeable to either. I don't.
It's just, he's gonna do repairs through this thing, I can tell you that right now.
I think
It's
I'd leave it
gonna
up
fall
to
apart.
the engineer and manager to determine that final.
Ultimately, he will postpone money to do those improvements, so he'll be committed one way or the other to complete it.
Correct.
I mean,
Which
you-
I don't. Not to.
Good, Art.
You are near the property line, so your trucks will most likely come in from Cranberry to get there.
Correct.
So why not put the top in after the water line?
Actually, let me back up. I don't know how they get there. I mean, if they're coming up from, I don't want to misrepresent where the trucks are coming from. I mean, they could come wherever they want to. I would anticipate, though, we buy everything from Cranberry Supply.
Yeah.
You know, a daily load of 2B gravel coming in is coming from that side. Did I hit that right?
That's something not to discuss with the engineer.
Right.
You put the overlay down on first, and you destroy it, you get the bond and redo it again.
So with the well paths and stuff, we told them which direction we wanted the trucks coming from. We do that here.
They'll have to bond that roadway, the whole entire length of the Klein Road.
So are they bonding all of,
Klein Road?
So there'll be different scenarios. They'll bond the improvements on Klein and Hoffman as part of this project. But any overweight hauling the applicant wishes to do on other township roads, they will have to bond those to the overweight hauling market.
Because I can see Cranberry having a problem with them coming up Powell, because that's not a state road, and that's probably got a 10-ton weight limit on it. So that's not local delivery. And then coming in off the 989, they're driving the whole way down Klein. So if they're,
Coming in, they come in Powell, it's still a local delivery. They come in Hoffman, it's a
Oh,
local
really?
delivery. They come in
Okay.
Klein, it's an awful. If you go off 99, it's a local delivery. But when you do constant, like he's gonna build a housing plant, that's gonna be constant, so he's gonna have to bond it. He may have to bond Cranberry's roads.
It'll still be
I
bonded.
agree with everything you just said.
Would it or would it not still be bonded after it has the top coat if he still has phases to complete? So if it's bonded and he messes it up, even though it's finished,
Gotta
coat,
rebuild
he's
it
still
again.
fixing it. So,
Well, would get, to be clear, at least I believe, I would bond it, I would be eligible for release of that bond as is provided. You would retain 10, we'll say 10% of that, which is a standard on a contingency item. I would then further bond it in an 18-month maintenance bond for improvements completed. Typically it's 15%. So I don't, again, it doesn't matter to me, but I believe that's standard in both the MPC and most developers, all developers agreements that I've ever dealt with. It wouldn't stay bond. If I pave it on day one and it's $100,000, that $100,000 doesn't sit for 5 or 6 or 8 years just in case. There are mechanisms, and that's the law. That's not.
yeah, but say you have a third phase left to do, you'll be bonding it again, right?
No, they bond it one time.
And that money doesn't stay available.
I don't have your developer's agreement. Typically, that money I would be released. I did the work,
Yeah.
and then you'd be able to hold. Typically, it's 10% of the initial construction value in a contingency at line item.
Okay.
And then on top of that, once completed, I would post a 15% maintenance bond for 18 months, in which time that money would be available to the township. So essentially, while we're there, you'd have 25% of the value of the building. Would be,
Yeah, so whenever, in a development like this, when the applicant wishes to dedicate public infrastructure, whether it be stormwater, water line, roadway, they would post a maintenance bonding, typically in the amount of 15% for either the MPC or the local ordinance, and that maintenance bond would last for 18 months. During that 18 months, the developer is still responsible for any damages or defects within the roadway, and prior to the municipality formally accepting those formally accepting the roadway, and releasing the bond, the developer would be responsible for fixing it before they come back and would formally take it over and release that bond.
we couldn't agree more.
Okay.
So leave here with the best.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
because this isn't the first time, I also know there's another local company that takes care of a lot of Klein and Bruner Road, namely Bruner. And there's a lot of traffic on that. So are we adding that, what are we doing to protect our local road that is not a state road, not built for triaxles? You're gonna bond it for 18 months, and repairs for 18 months. But this plan development could take, how long?
5 years.
5 to 6
5
years.
years.
That would be,
So,
That's a
so,
separate bond.
so every installment, you're gonna have a new bond for the road when you're running construction?
No.
No,
That's what you're
there's
saying,
two
right?
different bonds.
so I think,
Okay.
so
So that's what I'm.
there's two separate bonds. There's what's called the overweight or hauling bond for
Okay.
overweight limit. That would be the
Okay.
length of development as he's hauling on the local roadways, not within the development limits that he's working on.
Thanks, I missed that part, so,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
This bond would be placed, we've agreed to resurface, retop the road.
I get it.
We don't necessarily need to agree to do that. But because we have agreed to do that, it becomes an improvement associated with our project. So the performance bond then kicks in, and I have to post that performance bond, which then requires a maintenance bond to be in place. All that on top of the project-long excess maintenance agreement bond, or whatever term you guys, the hauling permit. Okay, so a sense, you're gonna have at least two, and theoretically, you could have three bonds on the same road at the same time.
Okay. I think we're on 8.
Again, this is pending, Ms. Wheeler has all the documents pertaining to declarations, covenants, easements, deed restrictions, pending her review, as John.
She has all the
Yeah.
Yeah, so we agree, it's waiting for Alexis okay on those documents.
Number 9, here this is the development requires that the board sign a developer's agreement. Given all we're talking about, they obviously can't do that before the approvals come, so that's just a pending. That would be one of those placekeepers that says it still has to get done. Hand in hand with that would be number 10, which is the, now we're getting into the bonds. We warrant, as part of the approval, that a bond will be issued in the amount of 110% of the improvements, which Len and Smith, by the way, we will submit that. We did submit it. It was with this final. So Len and Smith will review our cost estimate to build it. You're gonna have no comments. He may or may not have comments at such time as we've got all our approvals in order before we begin. Whatever other permits, Mr. Linedecker, do we have a grading permit to be issued? Is there a, regardless of anything else? All the other ancillary paperwork comes into place.
2, 1, and 3 ones, so I don't know if you got have a permit on that.
Yeah.
We'll look into that.
Okay. My point only was, this is yet another piece of paperwork that we've got to file and have in place to the satisfaction of your engineer and your manager, that we cannot possibly produce at this point in time because it's yours to approve.
You submitted it already.
We submitted it, correct. But until I've got that approval, this bond amount will go into the developer's agreement, which then needs to be signed by the board before I can start. So from a dominoes standpoint, I can't finish C before I finish A.
You have what they already submitted.
Yeah, they provided us a unit cost estimate for the proposed site improvements. We'll review it against the plans and add as we see fit if anything is missing for what would be township facilities. Then we will provide that recommendation to Ron and Alexis.
So you're the one finalizing that, though.
Yes. Yeah, we'll provide the recommendation, and that would be recorded with the developer's agreement.
Subdivision land development, this
Well,
has been.
before you go there,
Oh,
I
okay.
appreciate you did agree that you would give the township a $250 per lot fee for future transportation improvements on Klein Road.
I have, and I would like to restate that. Yes, that, and we can all write it down.
Go ahead, restate.
As sold?
Pardon?
When is that?
At the time, and actually that's a very good point. At the time we complete the required applications for each and every building permit associated with each and every unit, be that a 4-unit building or a single building. At the time of building permit application, we will provide to the township a $250, and I don't think we named it, but a traffic improvement contribution, call it whatever you want.
I called it a transportation fee for improvement of Klein Road as needed.
However, right.
You
You guys just tell us.
figure out a nice wording for that.
Yeah, typically traffic impact fee.
Correct.
There was some reason we didn't want to use that term,
So we don't have the word.
Yeah, it's not
so
an
we
official.
want to talk to Alexis to make sure.
We don't, you can call it,
You agreed to it, right?
we agreed to it.
I'm fine with that.
And a building permit, and that does work very well for us. We're happy to do that, and we respect the fact that you've allowed it to be done over time as opposed to multiplying
Yeah.
the number of units, because it's a lot to come up with when you don't, a year away from having
It'll be
something.
put in escrow
Yeah.
for the.
And Lori, I don't know, does Lori handle the permits or Nicole or whoever would handle the permits here? That's just another box to check. Yeah, on the permit that fee's gonna receive.
I can just add it as a line item on the fee, whatever the permit's
I wouldn't
issued.
add like about
Gotcha.
Do you want me to do that, Brett? like on each individual permit, I can just add that.
I would actually like that, so that typically when we do that, we'll write separate checks, so that from an accounting standpoint, you guys know this went to MDIA, this was building permit fee, and you don't have a, whatever the number, $13.89, and everybody's wondering what that was. Or, you know, I don't know, you know, I just pulled that number out of thin air, but that we identified that.
Okay.
Yeah. And it also helps to make sure you're, on your accounting end, that we actually paid you all of them. And nobody's going back 200 building permits and trying to figure out, did the building permit fee's gonna change based on the square footage of the house.
All right, we can go into subdivision.
Item 1, this is regarding the condominium plan, okay? We had previously provided an example of a condominium plan. We've talked about this at length. As is, I'm gonna actually go back, findings of fact, they do refer to, upon recording, a copy of that recorded plan will be supplied to the township. The reason that I do not want to provide you that plan right now is that within the condominium, we have multiple unit types. And they do move around, grades, what people want, and so on. And historically, when we provided a condo plan, minding you, that is a legal binding document that creates that person's unit. They own the film of the drywall, as is defined by their wall. To have those plans all floating around is bad news for everybody. We agree to give you the condo plan as we record them.
Yeah, and they, as discussed at the last meeting, they did add a note to the cover sheet indicating the same as such.
Well, I just need clarification on that. You say recording, I thought it was the completion of the foundation plan.
Correct, which then triggers the,
Being recorded.
right, when we've got a foundation substantially completed, the building is not moving. We will then prepare a condominium plan for that, or it could be multiple buildings on the same plan if we've got multiple foundations. We can only do that at the time when we've got a foundation.
Yeah. That's
We
what I'm-
prepare that plan. The township is not required to sign or review or sign that. That's a completely owner
To record it.
to record it. When we record it, we give you a copy of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
She has a question.
No, I said that's what you were.
Is that what it says? That's what it says. Okay.
B, with respect to placement of gas, electric, telephone, and cable, we continue with our ongoing coordination with the utilities. They will not give you final plans, I mean, this is utility companies. Upon receipt of those final plans, which they don't have a final plan, it is not like this. We'll get a design. I will happily provide them to the planning commission and the board as they are received, but they're not going to be produced, not for me, not for, for anybody in the planning stage of the development. They're not going to spend the time or the money until it's real to them. But we do acknowledge that you'd be provided. I don't really know what use they are, but that's fine.
There was some discussion over this overhead line that runs through the property.
Correct.
How does that read that you couldn't remove this line for some reason? I don't
No,
remember how that.
I had previously supplied to the prior application from Duquesne Light a simple letter that said, we cannot under any circumstance ever not continue that service. Period. The
What
end.
does this service? The velocity demand?
Yes, it continues to the
The
south.
backside of the second lot of velocity.
I've never been down over the hill, but I believe it's Velosky and possibly McClellan further down. The reason that, not that I'm blocking you answering, depending on when and how we build roads and what, quite honestly, Duquesne Light sees more efficient for them, I foresee us, as we build roads, we got a road here, right? Is that they'll grab this, they'll set a pole here, we'll run underground via our community, and they'll set another pole over here, and they'll just build another riser, and they'll serve that via the underground system within the community. But I have no say, I wish I did. I actually provided them multiple alternatives, trying to get them to say, we'll do this, this, or this, and they said, we're not gonna design that yet. For all I know, they may decide to come in, a different way and put up a whole new set of lines, because that's, older, I don't know. But
So are they making that decision then?
they make that decision 100%.
Is there a meter here?
There, I believe, was a meter there. There's a pole there, but that's gone. Well, the pole's there. I believe the meter's gone.
It's not entirely 100%, right? They're not gonna just stick it in a wetland.
Sorry.
It's not entirely up to them, right? I mean, they can't just stick it in a wetland.
What, they're around?
Bury the electric line. Everything that we're trying to keep you from doing, they can't just go and screw that up, right?
True, yeah, it's not in their best interest to do that either. If you flip over, I can, if you pull the overall site plan, I can generally show you. Here's the overall proposed.
Maybe you have it in here.
All right, keep going, you're still in the existing conditions, you're gonna get the,
It's C100.
right where you were. So that line of bearings, yeah, it's coming through here, right? So what I said to them, this is our phase one up in here, we need power here. So I had said, well, you could set a pole here, come up into our phase one, be it underground or a new pole, come down this road, come down here, and then set that pole here. Or they could set a series of interim temporary poles to maintain that until we build this and or this, and at which time they would take that offline, that aerial offline.
Okay.
But in either case, I gave them 3 options, and I'll have but the point being is, I believe we've satisfied the request, and the Duquesne Light is, on their own letterhead, in their own words, has said, under no circumstances can we ever not provide power to existing customers, which is the goal of this. Might go to number 2.
Well, I'm trying to think of when, my questions I have for myself is when do you intend to have something from Duquesne Light?
When I get into my phase one, when we get an approval, and I'm saying, hey guys, we're approved, we got our NPS, I need your design in 90 days, that's when they'll get focused on this. I have a authorization number and a work order number and all that good stuff, but until I tell them I need power on this day, they're not gonna do anything. They'll get focused on this when I say we've begun construction. And they generally move quickly, it's just hard getting them to force the water kind of thing. They don't.
Before we go on to, we're under subdivision A right now, but in the initial cover letter, John, you state that there's 12 single-family home lots, and I only count 11 here, so I'm wondering where the number came from.
I believe that's the existing home.
That was
That's the
separate.
existing home, yep.
I think it's separate, the way I read it.
Yeah, you're correct. I'll get that letter corrected.
You gotta go to 11, is that what you're saying? Yeah, he has this as separate.
That was just okay. I knew I had 11 there, and I thought maybe the letter was written.
I thought so too, and I kept counting and counting, but I kept coming up with 11. Okay, I'm fine there. B?
Item 2, regarding sidewalks along both sides of the street and other locations. The current status, ADA sidewalk transition to gourd line stripe area adjacent to the CBU parking area is unclear. Albert, I guess we gotta do maybe a little cleanup just to make that clearer.
Yeah.
If you had any.
What's the question?
So just adding confirmation of, adding call outs where the ADA stall, ADA ramps are relative to the ADA stalls.
For those, yeah.
Yeah, because right now it just looks like a concrete curb and it's there, so it doesn't show a clean transition there.
But it's following your detail though.
Yeah, it appears to be similar to the detail we just requested.
We'll just add more labels, yep, that's fine. I had that on, yeah, more labels, it's fine.
Actually, that should be already done, but
Say it again?
it should already be done, but it's just not yet.
We added labels in all the intersections for the ADA ramps. Then when I added the symbol, I said refer to the detail. I just drew that as a figure they'd build it off of the detail that shows ramps on both sides, but I'll make it more clear. I'll say add ADA ramps.
And this specific to the CBU was, we added the township CBU detail. We intend to follow that. You don't need us to spot elevation every 5 feet. I mean, that's why you have the detail.
Yeah, the details there to show ADA ramps are there. You just have to be ADA compliant when it's installed.
Right.
What is CBU?
Cluster mailbox unit.
Which is the fun thing. So we,
Mike, you had some question on the mailboxes?
No, I just want to make sure I read the ordinance and understood it.
Okay.
Item number 3, this is regarding open space usable. With regard to our trails, there are pending general permits that will allow us to stone or otherwise improve the culvert over the 2 small streams to allow connectivity of the trail. Again, a third-party permit. And the last.
Go over that. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is
this area and this area. You're
That's
saying
correct.
is, what are you going to do to get across that?
we just got a small culvert and then a,
Culvert.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so that it's walkable and you don't
Yeah,
have
it
to
wasn't
plow.
clear. That's what that meant.
Yeah.
You said I didn't think it was.
If you go to the plans way at the back, you can see how long. Go to the 700 series.
I can see it across.
It's going to be a really neat trail.
Take your word.
As far as trails, you didn't like the trail.
I did like the
So I'll move on to the last. This is zoning and subdivision number 4 regarding the CBU or cluster box units. The amendment, I believe it's 211 to the subdivision land development ordinance adopted in 2020, I believe, speaks to requirements for cluster boxes, cluster mailboxes. Contained in the back of that are 3 or 4 different routes by which parking is contemplated to serve those cluster box units. We did not, each of them show 3 parking spaces per each cluster box. Now, mind you, a cluster box can be purchased 9, 11, 13, 16, 18, and it's a box. We've all seen them. You can stack them side by side. You can build it. There's many ways. So it's not just 9. It could be, we tailor those to meet the demand of that individual street, so as to not have people all over the place. Okay. I don't know if either of you can speak to this. I believe that this ordinance was primarily adopted to address cluster boxes in multi-level apartment buildings or very high density, and I will read to you the reason why. I'm getting to my point, but I just want to say where the heck is it? Cluster mailboxes or mailbox building, when required by the postmaster, shall be located in the street right-of-way in front of the building, which they are designed to serve, and may not be constructed to serve any more than the number of units in any one building. So in my head, I'm picturing a 40-unit apartment building, and I've got a cluster box series that's got 40 mail slots in it somewhere, and I've got a canopy over that, a single one, okay? What we have, and therefore maybe 3 parking spaces is required. We couldn't find it anywhere in here where it identified how many parking spaces required. The detail just happens to show 3. From a standpoint of grading, we have 6 of them. We initially showed them all as having 2 parking spaces, one being an ADA space and one a standard space. Let me just light something under that.
Where are they at, Alberta?
There, I'm one step ahead. Okay. So we have amended the slightly and to make them stand out. All the green are the CBU cluster box locations. Okay. Where we're practical and as not have them in somebody's front yard, we've got 3 spaces here and 3 spaces here. Okay. And that was because they're serving a larger number of units. Where we've only got 10 or 12 houses on the street to begin with, I saw no reason to have 3 parking spaces. And I know I live on a street of 11 people, and if I'm getting my mail and I see 1 person ever getting the mail at the same time, you know, that's a rarity. So we were just unclear. We didn't mean to not comply with the ordinance, but the ordinance, I don't believe, said at every mail station you'll have 3. Or maybe that is the intent of that detail. We intend to meet the detail with respect to grade, ADA accessibility, the canopy. We'd like to talk on how we have a canopy. We like to, I'm not sure how you build that thing. It was a little like a TP. It didn't seem structurally that it wouldn't blow away, but that's fine. But the letter, mentions a modification, I believe, to reduce from 2 to 3. We really feel that the detail is a guideline on how to build the CBUs, not a standard for how many parking spaces you necessarily have. And as evidence of that, as you go back to read what I first read, if we're required to do the CBU and it can only serve the building in the right-of-way of which it serves, then I'd literally have a mailbox with a shelter over it in front of each and every building. That makes sense? That's why I believe this is more geared for apartments or, much higher density living scenarios.
Yeah, and Brett shows where the quads are. The CBUs would be in the clubhouse area, so you got like 30 parking spaces, 18
Right.
parking spaces there to get to. 2 handicap spaces plus the remainder of the parking area. So the little parts, like the 2 little cul-de-sacs over here, that just has 2 parking spaces. The 1 little cul-de-sac back there, 2 parking spaces. And then when we had more units, we added the 3rd parking space.
Yeah, I was gonna ask why is this in the clubhouse area?
It's centralized. I mean, historically, this is how I've done it in many communities. This is 104 units.
It's flat, it's out of the way.
Yeah,
It's behind
it's
the
right.
side, it's behind
It's
the
flat,
sidewalk.
it's out of the way. The clubhouse itself is fully ADA compliant across its front, so you're guaranteed that from the mailbox perspective. And quite honestly, it becomes a gathering place. We put a message board in there, whatever it is, happy hour on Thursday, cookie sale on Sunday, whatever the case may be. But it does become kind of a hub of activity. That being said, we don't want everybody, going there at one time, obviously. But again, respective of the detail, we envision probably that, all of these units being served by these, so we added 3 or more. All of these units being served by the one here, so we added the 3rd. But when we get to here with only 12 units, it's just more asphalt.
Isn't the one in the cul-de-sac going to interfere with snow removal?
I would imagine you'd push straight through, because it's on this side here, and you've got room to do.
My only question about this here, are those parking spaces meant to be exclusively for people getting their mail? So if you had a get-together party, you had residents looking to get their mail, and there were no spaces, I mean, I'm asking, I don't know what the purpose Are they meant to be exclusive for?
We haven't seen anything in the plans that say designated mail, double
Right.
box parking stalls.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. I think it is a good question. I would think, one, we honestly, I don't say none of them, but the idea that 2 to 3, that a lot of people actually walk to get your mail. If I live here, I'm certainly not gonna, I'm not gonna get my car and drive 100 feet to get my mail. I may get it coming in, but, you know, the clubhouse, I'd love to take, I wish I could just take you guys over, we've done this before.
These
And
two
we-
make sense. I don't know if these other ones do.
Well, we had a meeting with emergency services, was already, I mean, we talked about this, you know, this proposed location months and months ago. We had actually moved some, and I think here we had them down in the cul-de-sac, and the request was made to pull it back here, so that it was a mid-span. I mean, there were rationale, there were reasons. These we had up here, but we didn't want everybody to have to drive down, the whole way down the street to get to their mail, to turn around and come back. You know, initially, we had these, so but this plan in general has been reviewed from a mailbox location.
So in this here one, you're saying there's 2 parking spots here?
Mm-hmm. But you only have, I don't know, 11 houses on there.
This one makes sense, these 2 make sense.
Well, then,
This one would make sense with the exception of Chris's comments. I mean, if you're having an event going on, and, you know, events could be in the morning, afternoon, or night. This could be, messy for getting the mail. I know why you put it there, but
Yeah.
knowing you have an events, that might not be a good one. This one seems like it's at the end versus the beginning. I think it would be better out here, but I don't know.
well, but then it's in
You
the
don't
midst.
have any area to.
Right, this guy was the pickup,
Yeah, I
you know,
understand.
was to get that. And ultimately too, I do want to point out, this comment goes to coordination with the postmaster. Ultimately, the postmaster will tell me, we have our addresses and our road names approved. Getting the postmaster focused is almost as hard as getting the electric company, because it's far off, they got plenty of things to do. But ultimately, they're going to be the ones that tell me, at that location, I want, these 20 units served. And we'll tailor that mail station to fit. There may be changes, to that. Really, the only question was, the comment rather, is 3 parking spaces versus 2. And we simply don't feel that having 3 when you've only got 10 houses is, then it becomes an overnight party. Who knows what happens? Alternatively, and if you did, if you wanted to look at it from the standpoint of we just need 1 CBU, which is why I know it's geared to apartments, I could take all 219 units and build 219 mailboxes in a row and put 3 parking spaces there and say, well, I meet the ordinance. Which I know you don't want, we don't want. Yeah. So, I only said it from the perspective of where we were required to have 3 parking spaces, we actually have 14.
Say again?
The postmaster may move those.
Yeah, if they get into this and say it's more, they'll do a whole study of the
I
most
think-
efficient way, and
We're thinking this should be moved down to here.
are these on our tentative, or did we have these yet?
Those were on there initially, but I think we just showed little boxes, little concrete pads.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had like the little 1 parking spot without any ADA.
And these numbers are parking spots?
Yes, my handwritten numbers were how many spaces are at each location.
Yeah, we had like 1 spot with a little concrete CB.
Oh, when did you look at these?
At the mailbox units?
Yeah.
Yeah, you sent over a marked up plan saying, move this one to here, this is where they want. or-
Correct, yeah, we-
Change them,
I think, Ron, were you in that meeting when we got the?
We didn't talk about mailboxes, we talked about hydrants.
Yeah, I had mailboxes, so I was here somewhere with mailboxes, because I sent him the plan.
The only thing we really talked about was
Okay.
calling zoning up on.
I don't know how many people have to look at this, but I think this should be over here.
Yeah, and it also plays with the elevations of the grades. If you look at the end of the cul-de-sac, that's where you're the flattest. The other part through there is, you're climbing up, so you won't achieve the handicap accessible parking spot. When the road, even though we're at 4%, it has to be 2% or less. So all these areas where we put them, it's areas where it's nice level curves, or coming off the road where it's nice and flat, and then the roads get steeper.
But we're the one clearing the snow, and half of it's taken up by, like, properties. And then if you're gonna have 3 parking spaces, there's nowhere to push the snow. It's gonna be a nightmare. Especially if we get anything heavy.
I mean, can we just, yeah, I mean,
I assume this is a slope.
right, this is steeper, we're very flat in the cul-de-sac, which is why it's in the cul-de-sac. But if we wanna, rotate that counterclockwise, you're gonna pull the one spot up into the throat of the cul-de-sac, but we can get you,
If you're
a
okay,
plow and a half
if
width
you're okay,
between the.
if you're okay with having the handicap and then 2 regulars, and not have the handicap in the middle, and just kind of modifying that sidewalk path, you know what I mean? Then we can have the handicap closer near the cul-de-sac and then the 2 other ones on the steeper slope.
Right.
You know, because right now the way they show it is they have handy in the middle and 2 regulars at the end. As long as we show that it's, you know, we can do a special drawing for that one to show what it looks like.
Yeah,
Show spot
I did have
And
a,
then it can be moved.
right,
This makes sense, this makes sense. This one should be moved. Figure out,
Yeah, they just,
see what you can figure out.
they just said what they figured out.
right.
They can make-
I was gonna show you the details.
yeah, they
You only get so many options, and they all have the accessible parking space in between the 2 regulars, and that limits,
yeah, they just said they can move it.
okay.
Oh, but
That's
we're always
why we took that as a
questioning the parking for the.
sort of generic detail of how to build this.
The only comment I had on parking with my letter was with regard to the clubhouse parking lot. With the, anything associated with those cluster box units is all a saldo requirement, so I wouldn't have any.
I'm not hearing you.
The only comment that I had in my comment letter with regard to parking had to do with the clubhouse parking lot, not with those. Cause
Well, they
that's
have a
all,
cluster box in the parking lot.
yeah. But anything associated with those cluster box units is all saldo, so that's all gonna be LSSE. It's responsible for that.
I think I was mentioning, you had asked him if he had reviewed that. That wouldn't be your purview, if you will, to.
So ultimately, our comment boils down to, they propose majority of 1 ADA spot and 1 regular spot at each place parking at each of these cluster mailbox locations. They do provide the standard details relative to the trash receptacle, the mailbox unit itself. As we've already talked, the postal service will be the ones who ultimately approve the locations of them, and they'll have to reflect their plans to show those locations when they do get that approval. I think the discussion will end up coming down to, which we can review with staff here, is if one mailbox says serves 20 units, do they need 3 spots, or if they serve 9, do they need 2? I think that's something that is a discussion point.
Who's all serving this one?
That would be all the quads.
Clubhouse, that's all of this.
Right. Keeping in mind, I do try to, initially it's a cost to me, but your detail's got a trash can, it's got lighting, so I am mindful of what I'm putting into these, put one in every corner. Now and the ordinance also requires it's maintained by the HOA, there are things that have to happen in perpetuity on the maintenance side of these, from a repair replacement, that is not lost on me, that I try to do it reasonably to accommodate the residents and not have unnecessary repair, replacement, or maintenance costs.
Would you guys allow, like, instead of having the parallel parking, could we do somewhere we pull in, and then you'd have to ultimately back out into the road, because that would allow us to put it on this flatter area like you were asking, and we can just have a nice level pad, which is, you come off the road and you can just level it off.
But then you're backing into the
But then you're
road.
backing out into the road.
Typically, we've only permitted parallel spacing.
Because that would,
Even though every driveway in the place is gonna back into the road.
because that would alleviate the issue with being on a 4% road. You can level it off the road. You'd be behind the sidewalk and.
With that Alberta's suggestion, if we wanna.
Because there's room there.
Get these moved up here. We put them in, just put them in like this. put the mailbox, this is oversized, and then that way we can level off, because these have to be 2%. That's the ADA requirement. If we were to turn them 90, but then when you pull in, generally, even though every house could conceivably back out in the middle of the road.
You don't have much traffic. The problem
If you do it
I
parallel,
mean, listen, I
and simply
lived
move
for
the
big crossing for a period of
space
time, so I've dealt with
to
this.
the end.
There's never
So you have the two standard.
a lot of people there at any
with
given
that.
time. And most of
It
them
would, but
walk
it's just
there.
like, it's weird, it's
Right,
like,
so I mean,
it's just like.
this is the only,
Part in a
this is
weird-
the only
yeah.
place I've ever seen actually even has an off-street parking requirement. Because normally you just pull up on the curb like you're, the mailman, the Amazon man, the UPS guy, the whoever, they're just pulling up the curb. They're just gonna sit on the side of the street, get out, get their mail in 45 seconds, and off they go. But this is your ordinance, so, I mean,
Would you guys consider, that way we leave that cul-de-sac open for snow, pushing snow?
That's something we have to review with staff on that. I think ordinance, if he's proposing full lot angle spots, that's something we have to review with staff.
it's a way that fixes your concern about snow and my concern about doing something that's gonna put it on a difficult accessibility.
The handicap space would be like on the, kind of on the curb, on the both cul-de-sac, but then the other two would be kind of a weird situation there, you know, because then the road does get steep after that, whatever, 3-4%.
Consider doing what
So he's
3 spots in there.
three spots per head-in parking.
Yep.
Back out, and that's fine.
We'd have to see it on a plan to take a look at it.
We'll shoot you just a
Draft
diagram.
template, Yep.
And to the extent I believe that to be a de minimis change as we have those spaces shown, I wanna make sure I'm not deviating to a point, that, you know, deviates.
And you guys send over a draft plan, we'll review it.
Okay.
I suspect the mailman's not gonna wanna get out of the truck, get out of his Jeep,
Oh,
he probably won't approve it.
Yeah, but I think.
well, they gotta get out either way.
Yeah, it's behind the
True,
sidewalk.
yeah.
Yeah, for all of them, they gotta get out, but they get out and fire them in. It's neat to watch them do it, because their mail's all lined up. That's what's saying, they'll line the slots up, they'll label the back, they open one door and they'll fire 50 mailbox, 50 residents in 50 seconds. So, that was the content, while we can certainly talk about stormwater management, unless you like Alberto too, because it's not high.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the stormwater comments, the first one there about revising on our O&M maintenance schedule to include some of the extra plants, we can do that, the extra trees. Number 2 was working back and forth with Lennon Smith. They kept asking us about the existing culverts on Klein, and right now the culverts are undersized. So, but you guys had asked us to kind of redesign them or replace the existing culverts with bigger culverts. We did that, but I never added them to the profile sheets. So I'll just do 2 profiles showing those culverts. So that's number 2. And then number 3, I mean, that's about wise for the,
it's all part of your overall system that you have it, the Ys in there, so that they don't have to be
Yes.
put in later.
So number 3 is essentially a comment of not to install your main line and then tap or pour into the main line after the fact, but you have a set T for your Y units.
We have it.
Like you have a set Y coming out, you don't cut into the main line pipe after your main line.
Typically, all disclosure, what we do is we'll put all those in. I'll run a stack pipe, basically straight up in the air on a Y, so I know where it is. One at each corner of the building. We dig to it, we roll it back into the ditch we just dug, so I'm not cutting the pipe off and throwing it in a dumpster. And then that way they don't get run over, and we're not just throwing away pipe, and we're not having to dig to search for, those. That's how we do it.
Yes, yeah, so our concern was, we know you aren't showing it yet because you don't know the exact location, but when you're installing the main line, you have those in there, so we don't have essentially break tap-ins the whole line.
Yeah, I don't like digging.
you want us just to add a note to our
Yes.
utility plans?
Yep.
I have really neat detail I can give you of how we do that, but it's just, we just roll that wide and the only thing that keeps our guys from running over is 2x4s don't work. The balance of the letter was just restatement of the previously granted modifications. Yeah, that took a while to get through.
I noticed there was a missing one for the modifications that were in the findings of fact. The 2 entry signs at the roadway not to exceed 8 feet, are you still doing that?
We're still okay with the granted modification, I believe. I did not catch this.
So it didn't get carried forward?
It didn't
into
get
this
carried
letter?
forward.
Yeah.
He's gonna have it.
See it?
Do these 3 people want
One for sure.
one for sure?
I think it's this guy here.
And it's across.
Bailey.
So I remember this conversation, him wanting it on the other side of the road. You said you can't, I don't own that property. The solution, what you agreed to, what I remember you agreeing to was going under the road with it and putting in a shut-off valve and stopping there. Because then the homeowner's responsible from that shut-off valve to the house.
We talked about the Memorial Drive adding a line, but not building the sewer.
We're
So we
talking
did,
about water.
No, I'm talking about for water.
Yeah.
Those 3 homes on Klein Road, you said one of them wanted them. He asked you to put the line on the other side of the road. He said, I can't do that, I don't own the property, would you, and then me or Al or somebody, would you agree to taking it and putting a shut-off valve? You know, they call them boxes, I guess.
Yeah,
Even
curb
though-
box.
Even though they're round, I get it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so that way, if they wanna tap into it.
I
they
do
can
lose,
tap
I
into it.
remember having that conversation, but I don't think he's a recorder, Lorica's house. I do remember though, at the time, not having any detail, or even knowing if I was allowed with the municipal authority, because there are authorities you can't tap until you've paid the fee, so that you can't come down there in the middle of the night with your own plumber and just hook onto it and get free water until somebody catches you. I do remember that conversation, but I thought it ended with maybe further discussion or direction from the authority for that reason. I put the tap in, everybody knows a plumber.
Well, what I remember about it was, I thought you were gonna run the line and not put any taps in. You said that would be on whoever wanted to tap in.
That's what
The
I
line would be.
believe where we landed.
That's what I thought. But I thought it was gonna continue down Klein Road to the township line also.
Because in my heart of hearts, if I remembered saying that, I would say it. I do not. Do any of our plans show that?
we turn, let me go down.
As I recall, the only reason it didn't show it is you hadn't met with the municipal authority. That's the only reason. That's why it wasn't brought up.
I
as
don't,
an
you
issue.
can't imagine a reason why that would have, the municipal authority's never gonna tell me to not put more line in at my expense. Like, I wouldn't,
They tell you how to put it in, that's all, what their requirements are. I'll meet with our solicitor. But,
Is that what it is,
Hopefully-
1,000 feet from the
It's
end of the property
thereabouts, yeah.
to the township line?
and I'll look at, I'll get those real distances and maybe, depending on what those properties are to the north, similar to what we talked about with the Masons. If it's 100 feet and I can pick up the 3 or 4 houses that you're concerned about, meaning get it in front of their property, because I know there's only one 11-acre parcel to our east. And I know you guys all know that's potentially the church coming through.
300, C300 shows the utilities.
I don't know if it shows the whole.
It shows the water line, but it doesn't, it shows just to the end of the property, just, it ends at the end of the property.
I'm getting it. Let me turn one page at a time. Here you got, 1, 2, 3 houses with 5 lots. Then there's, I believe, 4 more houses in an empty lot down this way. That's what we can't see on this one. I don't know where we show that, we seen.
Well, we wouldn't show that,
I know you
yeah,
like,
we,
but there is a sheet that shows them maybe not in this pile, but overall, we have it.
That single line is, on the road there, that's not the water line, is it? See how they show the water line?
yeah, the WL indicates, and it comes here, that I believe is the edge of pavement.
I think this is the Dingle property here. Here, this one or this one. This one's the Dingle. Then there's, I believe it's 4 more houses. On that side of the road, on this side, there's a church in
There's one property.
Yolonsky.
There's a driveway, but there's.
Yolonsky's driveway, his house is over there. So,
Since that's at the end, do you really need to extend a main, or can you do like a smaller 3-inch line?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Very good question. I mean, I do need guidance from the municipal authority, and I believe that, we've given them plans of plenty of time to.
I think that
Would
would
it be any different than a branch line?
I think that needs to be discussed with the water authority. If you set a dead line on there, is that gonna cause water problems, water security problems? Put that line down, the line, and nobody taps into it.
Absolutely, and we flush it every week. Even if you have somebody tap it, you won't push enough water through
So
that.
if you extend that line down to a certain distance and nobody taps into it, it's gonna cause a water quality problem. So
it has to be,
Stagnant.
I don't know, I'm just thinking, cause that's the problem we had with Amber's water, it was always low chlorine.
you have to have a flush on the end of it.
Well, you have to have a flush, but you have to flush it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and you're doing it every week.
the municipal authority does it.
Yeah.
They make that decision.
I can assure, I will, with our partners, I will have a conversation about, the water lines, but from a planning standpoint, I'm sticking to what's on the drawings, because that's what I can do.
Well, I'm gonna request a meeting with the solicitor and, she was at several conversations when we were talking about that. I'll get her opinion, see what she says.
Chairman Horn.
I think we're gonna have a hard time, moving forward without that line there. I really do.
I would just, you've asked, in my opinion, numerous accommodations above and beyond the minimum standard as is provided for this development. I've accommodated as many as I could. The only one that comes to mind that I can't is building a bridge over the S-bend. Okay?
Yeah, but
So I
I gave you the
understand.
benefit of the doubt on that.
Pardon?
I gave you the benefit of the doubt on that.
Well, no, it's just not, I mean, we employ, don't lose sight, we employ people, right? And there comes a point in time, just like every one of us with a job in here, where the answer just has to become no. My point is, you've asked for a sewer line on the Modrek, done. You've asked for a water line extension up Hoffman, which we were not required to do to the property line. You asked for it to be extended onto the Mason's property such that they didn't have to come onto ours and chase it down the road to do that. Fine. You asked for the sewer to be extended up the last, I think it's Woods Lane or Wood Lawn, whatever it is, which we did not have to do, which we did.
I don't remember.
You've asked for,
What's that one?
Go to the last 304.
The 304. Right here. Like, I could have stopped this line 120 feet shorter than it is right now. You asked me to bring it up to here and put an easement on it so that these folks could get access to it versus having to come into the property. That was important to you a couple meetings ago. I didn't need to do this. Okay? You asked me to eliminate, there's no ordinance provision that says these lots could not have access directly on the Klein. You asked me to build a parallel road to that. I did. You asked me to,
This is common sense to good development.
I know, but I don't need to.
Good development.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't need, from a pure financial standpoint, I do
You
not
gotta
need to do
get
that.
it for
It
that
makes
one.
all the sense in the world.
This one makes sense also, but the.
Respectfully,
has to
but
be-
making sense doesn't make it a requirement of the ordinance.
That's all you do in PRDs, is you negotiate what's best for the community.
I know, and what I'm saying
That's
to
what
you,
we're doing.
I understand. We've asked for widening, which certain portions of Hoffman did in fact need to be widened by 6 inches to 1.5 feet. But there was no requirement to place a top over that entire road. I did that.
That's what you do with PRDs, it's not,
I understand.
it goes both ways.
Well, where did it come my way?
Comes your way, you got one hell of a good development.
I
here
understand, it complies
It's
with
gonna be
the,
easy to sell because
I
it's
know.
good development.
I understand.
That's important.
It
Not only
complies
to
with
the-
your ordinance.
It's not only important to the township because that's what we want, it's good for you as a developer.
You're asking for a tip fee, which was not required to be provided.
That's going to the bridge.
Wordsmith over here.
You're never gonna win.
I'm simply stating for the fact, eventually there comes a point in time, in this PRD or every PRD, where it becomes extraneous and just,
I
it
don't
begins to get financially not
I don't
viable
dispute that.
to,
Well, you asked where it went your way, take a look at the modifications.
well, how many are on
With
there?
the exception of maybe one, you know, which was done for a resident, just saying.
Well, yours outweigh mine, I think.
We need this line extended to the township line.
It goes your way because you are also doing way more than most of the residents in this township are allowed to do, because it's PRD, it's conditional use permit.
I agree.
All right.
Right,
So
but I
that's-
didn't
that's-
propose or draft the ordinance, you know, for the PRD. I'm simply operating under the laws that are in place.
This is Bailey. Bailey is the first one.
Chairman, we still need to discuss it, Owens.
Yeah, we have, Owen Pello here, he had some comments on, that he wanted to get clarified.
Do you have a copy of that letter? Kurt?
I know you lean on it.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't
Yes,
the-
I mean,
the only
if I
item
could,
was
I don't
the-
have it with me.
I mean, the only major item on there is 2, which is the parking for the clubhouse.
I thought that was something you said that could be discussed by the planning commission?
Why, I still need that to be addressed, and then whatever
Can you
information.
speak up, Owen?
Whatever, I still need the information in that comment to be provided, and then based on what is provided, it will need to be discussed. So, let me pull up.
Can you summarize, I mean, you're talking about comment 2 with the required parking.
Yes, so I know we briefly discussed it, it was a while ago.
Right.
That use is not really clearly defined in the ordinance because it's not, the closest thing I was able to push it on was the indoor commercial recreation.
Right.
There's no real accommodations for it being
Private,
an
walkable.
accessory use to
Right,
the
right.
overall development. The way this section in the zoning ordinance reads, it says where the use of the premise is not specifically mentioned, requirements for similar uses shall apply, which is where I pushed it under the indoor recreation. If no similar uses are mentioned, the parking requirement should be 1 space for each 2 proposed patrons and or occupants of that structure. That's actually more restrictive than what I pushed it under, because that one is 1 space for every 3 occupants. Based on it being the occupant load, you need to do the occupant load calculation for that building to figure out what the maximum occupancy is.
It's 1 per 3.
Well, the occupancy load is
based on the size of the building.
No, I know the occupancy
Yeah,
load of
and
the
then,
building.
and then it would be 1 space per 3 in that occupant load.
And how, regardless of the fact that this is a walkable community, everybody's got a parking space in front of their,
I mean, like I said, if I push it under the general, there's no use that it falls under, it's actually more restrictive than that because it would be 1 space per 2 in the occupant load instead of 3. But I was never the only document that I was given, which was right before the hearing, just broke down how many spaces were in the parking lot, which is 33, and then it references 35 on-street parking spaces within 600 feet, but the ordinance is clear that it has to be off-street parking.
so we'll have to,
can't-
I can tell you the occupant load, I just had to look this up the other day. While back, I would wanna go check that, but we would need, it's a stupid number of spaces.
Yeah. And I remember
We had authored a letter to this effect.
That's what, yeah, that's what I think he's talking about, how we mentioned.
but it doesn't.
I guess so. What I'm asking is, initially you'd asked for a study, be commissioned, authored by Gateway with respect to the parking need, which we gave you.
I don't know that this necessarily. This just says how many spaces are provided in that area. It doesn't.
Although we'll have to check tomorrow.
Yeah.
According to the community center and pool parking evaluation letter, I can.
Yeah, because this notes 33 spaces in the actual lot, and then it says that there will be, and I'm summarizing, it's multiple sentences, that conservatively 35
Right, because the
additional
parking
on-street.
need at that ratio is probably close to 70.
Yeah.
If you look at,
And I again, I know we talked about it on the phone after
Yeah.
I first sent this, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you that whatever the ordinance would say would be in excess of what you actually need
okay.
based on the community, but that's what
Two on each side.
the ordinance says, and I don't really have any way to deviate from that, which is why I was
That's how
trying.
we ended up with his letter.
Yeah, that's-
Yeah, so that's what I thought too.
That's what
why I
I
was
truly thought of, and I
trying to address it prior to the hearing, in the event that you would have needed a modification.
Your driveway.
And we have
I would have
two
liked to
per lot.
address it at that point, but
There's a vacant.
I'm sorry,
George, that's
you get what he
across from the
needs?
plan, correct?
I'm not sure who it was.
The water line will be there.
I think they're still talking about the
So
water.
on one side it'd be 3 because there's a driveway
I got
that
it.
goes back to another property.
It's 5 houses total beyond the development. Four on the street. And then ours,
The last.
well, and Charlie's is off the street. And so is the 11 acre up.
What are we counting Charlie's? The church and Charlie's. is
Okay, then
one
you'd
side.
count ours. Charlie's is just as far back as we are.
If you have a lot here that you can go through.
Yeah.
To get to. So.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about nothing, not worry about you, but we can sacrifice that for here, because it's there. We have 2 lots on each side with potential total of 5, possibly 5. That's all we're talking. You're saying that's 1,100 feet. It could be, I don't dispute that.
I only know that the distance from the sewer on this, I looked at our connection, nearest connection point in Cranberry for water and sewer was about 1,100 feet. I can commit to, I'll have a conversation with my crew tomorrow, better knowledge of what exactly that entails. If you wanna ask, the municipal authority if they can neck that down to a 4-inch line, which is more than adequate for domestic service, that certainly could or would be a consideration. But to just,
That's for Alex.
or whoever, I do not say that to imply or infer, whichever one is correct, that I have that money. Eventually, I certainly appreciate the modifications.
Next
I
day.
believe they're all justified and for good reason. But the financial side of this, with what we've given away is, not given away, what we've agreed to do above and beyond the ordinance is hundreds of thousands of
all in the name of good development.
Just remember, when you leave, your residents need to live with our residents.
I don't disagree,
They gotta be how.
well, but I would say to that, the water line's 15,000 feet closer by us than it is now.
We're happy right now. We're happy right now.
Well, if they want water, then what do they care how far if it's extended in front of the property or not?
Just saying. Gotta make everybody happy.
Oh, you have anything else? Good.
I do need to get back to this.
Yeah.
So, with respect to, I believe it's somewhere in the 210, it would be maximum occupancy when you consider, bathrooms, kitchen areas, workout, gym, all the stuff that's going on in there. I'm sure the justification for that was that we've got 35, which I could take you, that's actually about twice as many as we normally put in, having done this for the 10th time. This is way overkill. And the walkability of the community, the proximity of all of these homes with their garages to that community building is why we authored that letter, to begin with.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I have to go off of what the ordinance calls for. So while, let's say hypothetically you say that the occupant load based on the size of the building is 210, because that's the number you said, that would be 70 parking spaces.
Right.
That's obviously well in excess of what you're likely gonna need based on people walking to that, but that's what the ordinance calls for, and that's, like I said, that's why I was trying to get this addressed before the meeting, because if you would have needed a modification for it, that could have been added to the modification
I'm looking for
request
something specific.
if you were
I don't wanna comment.
35 spaces under in the off-street parking lot. I think that would have been an easy enough sell with the modifications requested.
And I apologize, this portion of this letter was discussing, and I'm not sure who. These spaces shall, it is stated under section 5.15, these spaces shall be both off-street and located on the same lot. Oh, that's what you're saying, the same lot.
Yeah, because it says in the letter, it references the 33 parking spaces in the lot, and then it talks about 35 on-street parking spaces. But because the ordinance clearly defines it as off-street, I can't factor in those
Then, I'll
35.
tell you, I'll build half a big clubhouse, but that's not gonna be good. Or I'll arbitrarily limit the occupancy to whatever the parking lot
And I
is.
mean, I like
I
I
don't
said,
care.
I don't think it would have been a hard sell to get a modification for it, but it wasn't.
And I apologize, if we failed to address this,
I even overlooked it when I got the letter, 2-3 weeks ago, I just looked at the thing with the light bulbs that you had. So I think when you threw on there, could be discussed with the planning commission. I thought you said at the end of that, I just kinda said that, that's a discussion item.
I mean, the simple response is that we will limit, via the occupancy permit, as you will make a special request to limit the occupancy to 3 times 35, which I can assure you is more than adequate for your normal gathering that happens there. I mean, that occupancy is one person per 15 square feet.
So I don't know if you're paying attention now, you're probably gonna need a modification.
Now, I'm just gonna change my building permit application.
Al,
I can't,
He's not paying
you're
attention.
gonna have to pay attention, because you're probably gonna need a modification on this parking lot.
I was listening.
No,
I was
we're-
asking if, Owen's, agreeing or disagreeing.
He disagrees, so he's gonna
He
need a
disagrees.
modification.
Yeah, it was just interrupted.
I can't circle back. I'm not the attorney, but I don't believe I can request a modification at this time. If I can, that's fine, if it's under the building permit. With respect to eat my own words, the tentative plan approval, now granted that was approved with this number of parking spaces, your letter pending, all things being equal. The issue is that your ordinance does not have a calculation that exactly lines up with the clubhouse. Okay? We'll do the homework, maybe I can come up with a different land use that more appropriately or as appropriately fits. But as it sits right now, by the commercial building code, I know that maximum occupancy load in that building is somewhere around 210 people. Now, that's never gonna happen, because I mean, we would be, you'd be
Never
sardines.
say never.
Well, never say never.
Never say
Well,
never.
it's never happened in the 20 years I've been doing this that I've ever seen 200 people in there. They don't. It's not a wedding venue.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I can ask Alexis if a modification is appropriate, because I believe you're not necessarily disagreeing that the parking on lot as well as the off-street parking or in driveway parking with the walkability of the community is deficient. It just doesn't match the ordinance.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you guys could make a compelling argument,
Yeah.
and obviously you've done enough developments that you probably have a big enough sample
We typically
size.
are like 21, 22
Yeah, to
spaces.
show that
Yeah.
this is in excess, you're saying, of
Yeah.
the amount of spaces that you need.
50% more.
So my question was, and I think you guys covered this a little bit, but, well, my question was, okay, so that's the occupancy, the full occupancy. And you talked about the neighboring spaces and such, and you have the 35 that are there. But if somebody is holding a party there and they rent the clubhouse, they're having a function there, and the outside guests come, if that's full, is it to be assumed that they'll take the off-street parking? Or that some of the guests will be residents of the plan, and that's how the spaces balance out? I'm trying to
Well,
understand.
if there were now this is a
It's a
practical.
hypothetical, yeah.
Well, no, it's a good question. It's it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Is it when you reserve the clubhouse?
Mhm.
That's when you're going to have an event.
Mhm.
So, what we don't allow, if you reserve the clubhouse, you reserve the clubhouse, right? So it's not as if I've got a party happening in this room, you've got one here, and you've got
Okay.
one here. You rent the entire clubhouse. We don't rent. You can't reserve the pool because that makes people very angry.
No, but
so-
if you rent the clubhouse, people can't be coming in using the gym, you have the full facility.
Correct.
Okay, so
right.
that kind of covers.
Right. And if you're walking down the street and you need to use the restroom, obviously you could just walk in the front door. You're probably not going to drive to use that restroom, but it very much
And given the size of the clubhouse, events probably won't be that large, but okay,
Yeah.
that sort of
and,
covers.
and we really get
this.
kind of. A lot of the clubhouse is office and showroom, but what we're using now typically, the main floor, we probably are adequate on the main gathering space. I'm going to guess we're adequate. It's just bathrooms. You got to have occupancy loaded bathrooms, mechanical room, pool room, gym. There's 3 people in it. You add up, and it's just gross square footage divided by 15 to come up with your load.
Now, when people do reserve the clubhouse, so it's the gathering room, kitchen, stuff like that, is there, in the contract, is there a max of how many people they can have in the gathering space?
Well,
Because that might also,
Correct. I would do 2 things. We control the bylaws, which operate, govern the community. So I don't know if I can do this, you might know it. When that occupancy load is issued for the building permit for the clubhouse, I requested that load, that placard that we're required is based on the parking. That's what's placed in the building.
I think that's likely gonna be up to MDIA
Okay.
when they review it.
And then additionally, via our covenants, we would restrict the maximum load allowed in that building at one time.
I think if you were able to demonstrate that as part of the
Right.
submission and then request that it be lower, you would probably have.
The section you're referring to, you said it'd be like a gym, one per 3, is it like per gross square footage or a net or what's open to the public?
Yeah, I don't know,
You
I
would have to
apologize.
look- you would have to look
You
at
should
that.
apologize for
Yeah.
this.
Well, even when I got that letter, I saw just that one item, and
That's
Yeah.
been on, we've had his letter for some time.
Yeah, so the closest use in the parking table that I was able to push it under was indoor commercial recreation. And
See, the distinction there, I would say though, is the commercial component.
Yeah,
Like, we're not,
and
we're not selling
I'm-
anything.
I'm not trying to make the argument that you are that use.
Okay.
But the way the ordinance reads is if the use is not specifically listed, which I think you're in this weird gray area because it is a recreational use, but it's private and it's accessory to the full development.
Right.
It says that I have to push it under the most similar use. And I feel
What-
like that's the most similar use.
We'll look at
And
that.
then going off of that, like I said, if I say that there isn't a similar use, it's a more restrictive requirement because it's one space per two occupants instead of three.
Right.
So I gave you the more lenient of the two
Understood. Yeah, right.
options to try to make it a lower number.
And the entire parking section does not have a provision that in the event that a use is not identified, a parking
And-
study can be conducted.
No, and there's nothing separate in the PRD requirements that would speak to that or anything like that. And like I said, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you on the amount of parking that you need for the development. I'm just going off of what the ordinance calls for. So,
Since Owen's comments were, or I guess approval was pending, the satisfaction of Owen's comments, and it's outstanding, would a modification then be permitted because it's satisfying?
That would be an Alexis question.
Yeah.
I mean, if you create a bigger parking lot, you're gonna have a bigger lighting problem too.
Yeah,
So
I mean, there's a lot of,
kind of look at that as an issue.
it kind of snowballs.
Yep.
Could it be solved by lowering the occupancy?
well, the issue is that they can't just arbitrarily say this is the maximum. The occupant load, like Brett said, is based on the total square footage of the building, and that's part of the state's building code. So they can try to make the argument when they submit the permit for it that, hey, we're setting in our covenant that when the space is rented, you're only allowed to have 3 times 30, you're only allowed to have 99 people in the building. They might be able to work around that in the permit approval, but I can't guarantee that, because I think the easiest solution would have been requesting an additional modification. But like I said, since that wasn't brought up before the hearing, I do think that that's maybe an option, but that's gonna have to be an Alexis question
Yeah,
about.
I mean, it's kind of the
that's legal,
technicality,
yeah.
so she would have to address it.
But I guess, the thing is, now I understand you have historical evidence that you're not gonna overrun the neighborhood, but if that does happen, when the plan is done, what Ron said is very true. They are our residents. We, somebody who's not involved in that event, we don't want our residents being inconvenienced by excessive, there's a bunch of street parking, there's a lot of areas. That's why I think,
Yeah.
we got.
When I mean historical, my family, my mom's, they're big, she's one of 9 kids, and a couple of them are not all with us anymore, but we used to have our family Christmas parties in our clubhouse. It was probably, 80, 85 people with a parking lot of, 22, 23, and a couple cars were here and there. My mom, and the building itself, I just, honestly, I don't agree with the 1 per 15. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, I got somebody sleeping in the mechanical room for crying, I got 8 people in the mechanical room to get to that 220 people. I got 16 people in the bathroom. Functionally speaking, if I could take you guys to one, you'd walk in and say, there's no way 220 people are gonna fit in here unless they're shoulder to shoulder and maybe some on top, sitting on shoulders. It's not that big. But we've got 8 or 10 tables that accommodate, I think there's 4 chairs at each one. They're playing bridge and book club, whatever it is. So you might have 30 or 40 people, most sitting down, a long kitchen bar, probably about the size of that, with 8 bar stools in the front. So it's a nice room to accommodate, 60 to 80, maybe 100 people, but above that, it's just not.
I mean, I totally understand what you're saying, and I've seen it, but I think we have to document it.
Yeah, well, we'll get it worked out. That's
Well, I
fair.
think
That's why this is a workshop, by the way. I mean, to identify,
The good part is that the road system is per township spec. They're not smaller, as if the township wasn't taking it over. So you have the room to park a car on the road without inconveniencing the whole neighborhood. And you could say park on one side of the road, that's it. So
most of the events that could grow, with, steal a football game, they do that. They're walking, or at least some of them are walking.
the other issue, Owen, was lighting. Did you get that resolved?
Yeah, Alberto added a typical light pole detail for single-family dwellings and quadplex buildings. The only comment I had on that is whenever you get into future phases that have the duplex buildings, to just add the duplex light pole detail. And then the only other comment I had was actually that sign modification was excluded from cover
From
sheet.
the, nice, okay.
And that on sheet S1, that those two signs should be noted. That's the sign plan that notes like all of the speed limit signs and
Gotcha.
stop signs and stuff, that if those two development signs are to be part of phase one, that they just be noted on that sheet. I know their locations are marked, but just add a notation of what they are.
Okay.
So Alberto's working directly with you to solve the parking and capacity
Yeah, with Brett.
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Brett.
We'll get into that. I wanna read that, I know you know it better than anybody, but, what else, is there in there as a use, or, you don't want 70 parking spaces for a building for 60 people. You'll have
Take anything
skateboarders will love it. Y'all are bringing
All right, the major unsolved problem is the water line.
Oh, can I ask
You
one
could
question?
do something on your end, that'd be fine. I'm
I
gonna
have
check
one
with,
question, if it's okay.
if, in a minute,
Okay.
yeah, I'll check with council. To me, that's majorly important. So just
You and I have
leave it
always been clear what's majorly important to you. I've never left here without,
It's just-
any confusion about that, I promise you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's totally off the subject, but I know we're not expecting many kids to be in this development, but if there are the school buses going to come right up into the development and pick them up, or is there going to be a location where they can go to?
I would anticipate that if there are kids, and I anticipate there might be a very few,
Yeah.
but given that we've got so many points of ingress and egress within the community, that they would, and the school district, not me, gets to decide this, they would choose the most beneficial, shortest, whatever criteria they would use, come into the community on one and go out the other. But I don't have any say, none whatsoever, in the
They
school bus
probably would
routing.
come in
Roadways will be
where they
just
can
like
make a
this.
loop.
So, yeah, so
Go
they're
right back
township roads.
Where they can make a loop.
I was just curious if there, one other time they wanted to put a building down at the entranceway for the kids to walk down to. And I was just curious which way we're going to go here, so. That's fine.
And I think, but Mike, I believe with that one, that was just one entrance. That was just one.
One entrance, yes.
One,
I'm gonna
Center
guess
of
that the
ingress
cul-de-sac
egress.
at the top wasn't adequate for the school bus to turn around,
Probably.
and so they've moved them all to the bottom and then
Yeah.
put a bus.
there was only
Having
one
never,
in-
I don't even know where you're at, but,
there was only one ingress. for
Yeah,
this
that would be-
location.
whereas this, I could envision either entering from Hoffman, looping through the plan, maybe a stop or two, and then exiting on
Yeah.
Klein, but you're in a safe condition in any scenario. And the shorter cul-de-sacs, presumably the bus stops would be, at the ends of those,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah,
I can't imagine they would just make this loop right here.
Right.
yeah.
You know,
Several-
rather than
several
turning around, they gotta turn around somewhere. So why wouldn't they
Yeah,
just come in?
I don't know anything about your school. I would see them doing that.
They do
Stop,
that.
so
They do that.
Yeah.
anything like that would be,
Yeah, there's a lot of alternatives.
right.
Anybody else have any questions? This is not a citizens meeting, unfortunately.
Chairman Horner, I just have one comment to make in regards to an appeal on the water line. I would just like everybody in this room to know that I appealed the water line, and that appeal has been held against the Department of Environmental Protection before the Environmental Hearing Board. That appeal has been dismissed. The basis of the appeal was not in question if the residents on Klein Road wanted water or not. I very clearly went to the municipal authority from day one with my involvement in 2022, expressing our dire interest in water at the Dangle residence. The appeal was held against the Department of Environmental Protection in an administrative procedure violation. That was a simple act on the DEP's part, that they approved the water allocation permit without following the Administrative Procedures Act. So there was never a question as to if residents on Klein Road wanted water or not. And I just want that to be very clear on the record. We do want water. I am here representing the Dangle estate, Ed and Linda Dangle, and I have been before the municipal authority, and water is a priority for us. So thank you for standing behind us as residents of New Sewickley and understanding that that is a concern for us. We appreciate that.
I don't know if there's anything here that we would have to get involved with or anything.
The case is dismissed.
Or we're just doing,
Well, I'm just letting everyone here know the case is dismissed. It was brought up, so.
I had no knowledge of the appellant or the condition or the status of the appeal.
I'm
other than-
sure that you are
Other
wrong.
than that there was an appeal.
It's public record.
I got my own to do.
all right, to wrap up tonight. Brett's gonna try to do something. The township and myself are gonna try to do something. I don't even want this to take a week, because we have to decide by the 17th whether to move on this or not. And I have made my own personal opinion, and I would try to convince my colleagues here on the commission that I just can't see us moving forward without that water line. But let everybody do their work and we'll see what happens. You all would agree or disagree in the end, that's where we're at. In 2 weeks, the 17th, I believe, is when I said that we would move on this, pro or con. But the extension only goes to the 19th, I believe.
The 5th.
5th of November.
It's not for you to, that's to the board, that's complete resolution.
Okay. We got an extension. The solicitor got the extension with the developer. So we have that much time to work on this and try to work out any differences. And right now, the only difference I see is that water line. But I want to review that with the solicitor to see what her thoughts and concerns would be. So that's where we're at. If any of you want, if the solicitor does grant us a gathering, if you all want to come, I can tell you when it is, if you want to come. We'll look if you want to take the time or not. So you want to be notified? Okay. We'll notify the planning commission.
Call her tomorrow.
When we get that.
work out.
Yeah. We'll include Ed, even though he's not here tonight.
Would you expect it to be during the day, or you
I would think during the day, but
I know Ed won't be able to be here.
we can do it in the evening.
He's
I'll
off
make
on
it,
Columbus Day though, correct?
make it
know?
available.
Are you still gonna get? So see, we don't schedule on that.
When's Columbus Day? Anybody know?
14th.
You still honor that guy? You do? You're off on Columbus Day.
I live a mile down the road, man. It ain't that far.
All right, well, I think we clarified a lot of things tonight, and I'm glad you all came.
Thank you for your time. That's a long,
And we'll communicate accordingly into the future, and let you all know what's going on.
I'll leave you, I had left the one set of drawings there, which highlighted the mailbox locations. Would you like to keep those?
Well, you were hoping to change that one.
Right, we got that direction, we'll change it, yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of, where they generally are.
You wanna review that with anybody?
Yeah,
I know the post office has the
Just
main
wanna review
set.
it with road foreman, make sure he's okay with what Art said about snow removal.
Well, I think Art's right on
We
the snow
talked about the
removal.
mailboxes, isn't it?
No, we
They
talked
kinda
about fire
already-
hydrants, signs, stop signs, we did all that. And we talked about street names, we talked about,
Don't remember.
yeah, we didn't do the actual one.
I'm getting old then.
Good then.
Excellent job tonight, Alan.
John, thanks.
Yep, he's back from vacation.
He didn't wanna come tonight?
He had a conflict tonight.
No, it was his vacation.
He said too short.
What's a vacation?
Are we excused?
I went on vacation last week to the
Have a great night, sir.
Canadian Rockies. It could, possibly I couldn't have gone another day. I was glad to get home.